Welcome to the Master Your Mindset and Metabolism podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Dunlap, creator of kellydunlap.com. I am a mindset and metabolism specialist who helps women reprioritize their health, balance their hormones, and reboot their metabolism so they can regain their energy, finally lose the weight, and feel confident in their own skin. I help women break up with the start-over syndrome, all or nothing mindset, get them off the diet wagon so they can create a consistent plan for a sustainable, healthy lifestyle free of diets. In this podcast, we will talk about all the things mindset, metabolism, the role our hormones play in all of this, and how to reboot your mindset and metabolism so you can finally step into your new empowered life. Thank you so much for being here and pressing play. Now let's begin. Hey friends, Kelly Dunlap here. I am super excited to introduce you to my friend, Tyler Charlebois. He is an expert and life coach in relieving anxiety. Now, I had become friends with Tyler somewhere along the way on Facebook. You know how that goes. It's like you become friends and you've really never chatted. But I've been watching him for quite a while. And I was watching some of the sessions that he was recording with some of his clients. And I thought, okay, this guy I need to chat with and watch more. And I started to watch some of his stories. And a lot of what we do are very, very similar. But of course, I like to have people on the show, as you know, that are similar to me. We have lovely conversations, but I love to learn about their perspective and their point of view and their experiences and how, what their story is all about and how they got where they are. And so I am welcoming Tyler here, and I'm super stoked to have you. So welcome.
Thank you. Well, that was a great introduction. I'm super pumped to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yes. So Tyler and I, we were chatting prior to I hit the record button, and I had asked him, I said, so tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to this point. And I would love for you to share the same thing with them when you had talked about Tony Robbins and, all the things. So
all the things. Yeah, let's do it. So I essentially got into this field because my whole life I've been curious I've been curious my whole life to understand the answer of why do people do what they do. I just wanted to understand. Whether they be rude or nice, doing good things or quote unquote bad. I just wanted to understand what was driving all human behavior. That's been my driving question my whole life. And when I saw people hurting or in any kind of emotional pain, I just wanted to help them through it. It sucked to see that. And I had no tools in my arsenal at the time, obviously. So that was a burning desire for me, a burning passion. And then I got a little older and I sucked terribly at relationships, not just intimate, just social dynamics. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I had a lot of frustrations and shit of my own. So I had to first find the answers to my own questions of how do I do this for myself. And then by around high school, I started to find that I naturally had some answers for people, whether people were asking me, how do I talk to I couldn't give advice to myself.
Wait, hold on. We got to go back to that. We had a little pause there. So you had found that you had kind of some inner knowing of your own and just naturally. So that just kind of came to you. And then our internet kind of got all wonky there for a second.
Okay.
So carry on.
Yeah. So I seem to just have, whether you call it intuition or, that inner knowing of just, I had basically an intuition of what I thought would work for people. And I seemed to get results for people in high school like crazy. And so I thought, okay, I have a knack for this and I like it. So maybe I'll go to school to be a therapist. The only challenge was everybody who I'd met in high school and post high school, when they had talked about how they've been to therapy, they just didn't seem, from my perspective, to be getting any better, or at least for what I would have defined as better, which means you don't have the fucking problem anymore. That's a pretty good definition to me.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
So I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to go to school to be a therapist if I don't seem to be getting if they don't seem to be getting the results of their clients. So long story short, I ended up finding the name Tony Robbins and his partner, Chloe Madonis. So one is a life coach for someone who's not familiar, and the other one is a strategic family therapist. And I noticed they were getting results for people like so fast, like 1, 2, 3 sessions, super brief, and it's lasting change. So I became obsessed with studying this. And so I'd start getting on Facebook or Instagram, do live stream interventions, follow up with them months later, the problem was gone. And I just kept going like this.
So have you attended a Tony Robbins event?
5 of them, yes.
Wow. Tell me more, because I've been seeing those for so long. And several of my, business coaches in the past have all attended these events, and you hear that they're just crazy and you're like, oh my God, you're like wired for days and hours. So tell me about this.
So this is one thing that, like, when I came back to try to explain this to other friends and family who are not part of this world, explaining it almost doesn't make sense. But what I can tell you is, when you go in there thinking I'm going to get X, Y, Z, like I'm coming here for these specific answers in these areas of my life, you end up not only getting those answers, but you end up getting answers to questions that you didn't even know you had.
Mm-hmm.
And so you walk in as one person, and you literally, like by definition of, obviously you understand the nervous system and identity, you literally walk out as like a whole other person, able to do things you just never were able to do before. So things like we walk on fire. It's a metaphor for whatever the fire, quote unquote, is of your life that you're really afraid to take action on. It trains your mind. Like, if I could do that, and it's way easier than we think. If you can do that, what else can you do? And you keep going, and you're building that emotional muscle. So it's an event where you are learning at a rapid capacity in total immersion for either days or a whole week long.
It's almost like a transcendence of vibrations. Like, it's like you are being excelled into a higher vibration very, very quickly is what I'm getting. Like when you say that you go in one way and you come out another. So if you've gone to like 5 events, then that means that there's 5 different versions of you, right? That has gone. So each time you're like building upon.
100%. So to give perspective in a tangible way for the audience and for you, first event, I was working uber full time, could hardly make ends meet, couldn't do a relationship. I couldn't make shit work. First event I went to, within, I think it was like 4 to 6 weeks of going to that event, I went full time in my business. I was like, holy shit. Or sorry, no, I apologize. The first one, I got my first clients. Second one I went to, immediately after, I went full time. The next one I went to, I met my girlfriend. So I could finally do the relationship stuff. The next one I went to, her and I were actually serving other people. So we were crewing for the event, but it still affects you in the same sort of way because you see behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
And then since then, my income, I would say 5x'd, and that was in November, and we're in January. So just like, this is one of those things where, for the audience at least listening, you would have to experience it to understand why these things work. But you definitely enter with one paradigm or mindset, whatever you want to call it. You shift with a whole other identity when you come out.
But they don't have to go to a Tony Robbins event to experience this, because you and I do this, right?
Exactly.
We do this.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally. And that is the key, is shifting the identity into the vibration where all of the magic is just waiting for us. Right. So I could say exactly the same thing. It's interesting, since I really started focusing on that specific thing. Because even when I started my business back in 2017, my worth, my money mindset, money wounds were like freaking bleeding. And it's like, the first few years of my business, I'm watching everybody just catapult and skyrocket. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, no, I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just in the wrong vibration. I was in the wrong radio station. I was in the wrong, realm. Right. And so then once I started to really, really have that unwavering belief, which is what we get from these mindset shifts, and we identify these beliefs that we had and all of that stuff. Like, I know my money wounds go way deep from generations. Right. And, my income tripled, and it's just fascinating. Am I doing more? No. Am I doing anything different? No. And that's what people don't get. Yes, you have to do some work, and you have to market yourself and do all those things. but it's really the vibration that you hold on a day to day.
What I was going to add to that, say, in different language, because it might hit people differently when they hear it, is I really believe that we will always follow through with who we believe that we are, and we'll never be able to do something that is inconsistent with our identity. So if you don't believe you're the kind of person who would X, Y, Z, your brain's not even going to question if you can or not, because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I like that.
So whenever I'm working with someone, for example, I'm always making sure that whatever the changes I help them create, whether it's from anxiety to confidence or whatever to happiness, like whenever I help them get that result, we make sure that that becomes a part of their identity. So that way it actually sticks long term, right?
Yeah. And I like how you said that too, because it's so true. Well, that's not who I am. That's not who I am. That I could never be that, and that is so true. So I want to just kind of recap a couple of things, because the internet, which is so strange, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Keeps kind of going in and out. But we talked about your experience at Tony Robbins, that you had gone 5 times. Each time you went in as a different version of yourself. Each time that you left, you were, a totally different person, which to me, in my interpretation, would be that you transcended, that you basically had this elevation of vibration every single time that you came out. And each time you were vibing at a totally different realm. Therefore, all of these magical things were lining up for you, right? You pull in a different, business or what have you. You go full time, you find your girlfriend, like all these great things are happening, which is so cool. And that's what I'm really starting to, what's what I'm looking for? Full on, without a doubt, have the unshakable belief about that, because for so long I didn't really have that unshakable belief. I didn't. And now I'm able to say, oh my God, yeah. And I need to figure out how to constantly stay in that vibration and even go higher. And that's kind of like where I come in with, well, the food we eat, that's a vibration. The stuff that we consume, whether it be drinking alcohol or consuming, books or TV or radio or whatever, all of that has everything to do with where we're vibing, which I know you totally agree. So it's so fascinating to me how you're this young man with this inner knowing at a very young age. I mean, high school, for God's sakes, like in high school, I was just thinking about my next drink and, what guy I was going to hook up with at the next party. I mean, literally.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get
it. And so for you to have such a filter, like a set of glasses that had been given to you, metaphorically, in the sense of like, I can see right through this, and therapy literally is not the way. There's a better way. And you had said something earlier to me, I think before we hit record, was if you could do something in a moment, you can change it in a moment.
Yeah. If a problem shows up to you in a moment, then if a problem shows up in your life in a second, then you can get rid of it just as fast.
Yeah.
We tend to have a belief that, the problem just showed up, but it takes forever to get rid of it. That's just not
God. That is so true. We look at it like, okay, now there's this problem, and now I have to spend the rest of my life overcoming it. It's so weird.
It is weird. It is. If you really think about it, that's a weird thing to believe. But yes, it's true.
Yes. The beliefs that we have are just so, like, it's ridiculous. And Gary V, I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Oh yeah.
But, I watched a reel that he talked about today, and this guy stood up and just said, what, like, in other words, what the fuck? I can't keep an employee. Am I the problem? Or no, what's the problem? And Gary's like, you're the problem.
You're the problem.
And the guy's like, oh, duh, and it goes back to like the expectations and, things like that. But it's so cool when we can get to a point where we are owning responsibility and recognize like, hey, I don't have to stay here. You mean I don't have to stay here? You mean that problem that I just thought about a second ago, or just realized I had a second ago, isn't going to be with me for the rest of my life? That's like so crazy powerful. So you are kind of going back to you're now 27, and you're specializing in helping people to relieve their anxiety. So tell me more about that, and how it like really lights your fire, and some examples of things. I think there was something I had watched about a woman being afraid of a balloon or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll start with that example and then I'll just segue from there. So I wanted to show people that lasting change literally happens in a second. And some people ask me, they're like, do you mean it literally, or is that like a thing you say that sounds good? I'm like, no, it actually happens in a moment. We may say that change takes 10 years. It took me 10 years to stop smoking, 10 years to stop whatever, or start whatever. But if you really just think about it, it took you that long to get to the moment where the whole change happened. We just like to say, since I started thinking about it, no. It starts the second you decide. So I wanted to prove this to people, not because I'm so great, but because I wanted to show them what they are honestly capable of. So long story short, this girl, I found her on the internet and I was like, you have a phobia? Great. I'll drive all the way to your place. We will do the session right there. It'll take 20 minutes, maybe give or take, and you'll never have the phobia again. So this woman had been through, I don't even know what the trauma is, because the beautiful thing about this is when I work with people, they don't need to tell me what they've gone through. All I need to know is how they're processing things. I don't give no offense to people. I don't give a shit about the trauma. Like, keep that to yourself. I don't need to know the dirty laundry. I want you to be able to just be free of the feelings towards it. So, went there. I did a very quick process on her. And I think that was about May or June of last year. So however many months away that it was. And she's only been getting more confident and feeling happy since. So I like to explain to people that anxiety is a learned response from something that we did go through. And the positive intention initially of anxiety is to keep us safe from future pain, which makes sense. The problem is it's like contracting a muscle, right? It's like if we lift we contract our bicep doing a bicep curl and then never ever letting go of that when we're done the curl.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
So something happens. Someone's abusive. Someone yells at us. Someone says we can't play games with, whatever the thing is, where we get anxious because we're like, oh my God, protect myself from this danger, this rejection, whatever it is. But then we never let go of that contracted muscle. So in my work, I literally never, ever, ever go to the past. I might go ask them a question about like their parents for like quick context, but I legitimately, this is my approach. I never ask them like what happened and the whole thing.
Yeah.
I will strictly just show them how they can change their emotions literally right now. And then show them how that can get them everything that they want going forward. So the process is very, very simple, very seamless, and it's just it's helping people to I'm trying to word this right. I get tongue twisted. It's showing people how to teach their own brain to let go of that survival pattern.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And that literally can happen in minutes without exaggeration. Well,
like Dr. Joe Dispenza says, what fires together wires together, right? And that's exactly what it is.
Anchor.
So that you're doing is you are helping them to like rewire. And that's what we both specialize in, is that whole reprogramming of that subconscious, where when I realized that, I have the ability to change that stuff in my own mind, I was like, you're kidding me. I thought that I was, going to feel like a failure forever, and that I was never worthy, and that I was always going to be judged, and that I was not, all these beliefs, all these shadows, that I had. That was just that I allowed to kind of allow me to sink and be small and contract.
I think it's.
Go ahead.
Oh no! Just to piggyback that, I think it's important for people to realize that feelings of anxiety or overwhelm, or like these things, are never going to go away. Like the problem in and of itself, like if it's anxiety about a certain thing or whatever, like that thing can go away. That feeling can go away, but overall, the fear and anxiety will never go away like forever in any capacity, because we all have that deepest fear that we're not enough. There's no human that doesn't have it. So it's not about never feeling anxious. It's about being able to control that feeling when it comes up and doing the thing anyway.
The resilience.
Yeah. It's just knowing that like shit's going to happen. We're all going to get afraid, but just dive into it rather than like clenching again and then fucking like unlearning and then again unlearning. You just realize I'm going to feel this feeling, but I'm just going to keep going with the feeling in. And then I'll realize, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of, and keep going.
Yes. And you notice too, it's interesting that we're talking about this because even as entrepreneurs, this is a very, very common thing that we have to get very comfortable with is the ebbs and flows. And we feel that, like, oh my gosh, like I'll hear crazy stories. Where's my next client coming from? Or is anybody going to like me? Or am I going to, is anybody even going to want to sign up with me? Or, oh my God, what if I got to go back to it? And I hear all of this stuff and I'm just like, that is not true. Right? It is not true. But I've learned to build up the resilience. I've learned that those voices will come, just like I still hear my voices about let's get drunk and fuck it, go whatever. You know what I mean? I still hear the voice, but I'm like, no, that's not me anymore. And that's not who I identify with. That's an old version. And I just set it aside and put it in a different compartment. And I think that there is this misinterpretation or this misunderstanding from so many people that they think that they will never hear any of that. And that, there's something wrong with them if they're hearing it. But that, you and I can agree. It's like, well, you hear it, but it doesn't mean that your body needs to follow the mind,
Exactly. And said differently, like, I love that. I tell people all the time that you're always going to hear the thought, but until you believe the thought, you're not going to feel anything. Like, I tell people all the time, how many times in your life have you ever thought the thought like, oh, I'm going to fucking kill that person, but then you don't? It's because you didn't believe you were going to. So you heard the thought, but you knew it wasn't true, so you didn't feel it. Like,
I'm over here like fist pumping because I'm like, yes, that is so well said. Right? It is so well said. I'm going to fucking kill you. But do you do it? No. So just because you hear it in your mind, something else is, oh, that's so good, Tyler. So good. So good. So good.
I like to explain to people that, so many people, at least that I speak to, they hear these thoughts and they try to like think their way out of the thoughts. But the way I tell people is if you just move your body, like breathe differently, stand up differently, smile differently, like literally just use your physiology differently.
Yeah.
The thought goes away that fast. Because the second you change, I know Tony Robbins gives this example a lot. It's like when you change how you're using the body, whether it's your breathing, your muscle tension, your movement, anything with the body, he explains that it's basically like turning the channel on the TV. Go from horror to romance to comedy, comedy to action.
Yeah.
You just change it one way, you feel one way. You use the body a different way, you feel another way. And so really my work is just showing people, they're like, oh, I can't get out of the thoughts. I'm like, stop fucking thinking, stand up. They stand up and you see their face change. I'm like, how do you feel now? So change the body.
Yeah.
Your mind will follow suit.
Just something that simple that somebody could do, stand up. And I think Brendan Burchard talks about that too. And I'm sure he's probably a Tony Robbins guy, but it's a recalibration tool, right? And so it's kind of like I talk about doing tapping. So I'm an EFT tapping practitioner, and that is doing what? It's changing the energy. It's just changing the vibration and the calibration. But if somebody doesn't want to sit there and tap their face off, sometimes I'll tell them to press, but I like the idea that what you're giving, which is it's the same thing. They could just stand up and do something different, which is great. That's great.
Many times, right? How many times have we either been in one room of our house, maybe say on the couch, and we go to get something out of our bedroom or out of the kitchen, and then the second we walk into the kitchen, we're like, why am I in here? I don't fucking remember. So that's a pattern interrupt. You obviously know NLP, so do I, but it's the same thing. Change the way you're using the body radically, and you stop having those thoughts. So I remember my girlfriend was here the other day, and I was laying on the couch, and I was like, oh, I need to go get the thing. I didn't say it to her, but I thought I had the thought. So I walk into my kitchen, and I was like, I can't remember. So I went and laid down in the exact same fucking position that I was in. I remembered it immediately, and then all I did was get up much slower while I kept it in mind, so I didn't interrupt the thought pattern again. Like, it's actually hard. It's hard to not interrupt those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
But people have such a habit of using their body and their like focus in a certain way that the same fucking horror channels keep coming up.
Yes.
And they just get locked into it, and then they think there's no dial. It's like, no, just use your body differently. I promise you right now it'll go away immediately.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Amazing. No, it is. And that I'm so glad that you brought this stuff up too, because it's just this simple thing. So like today I talked about how I did a story on how I was with my trainer. She's a dear friend too. And we just talked business and all this crap, but she's an expert, she's an expert trainer, nutritionist, all the things. And I'm still mind blown, but I'm trying to do this squat and I have kind of issues with my neck and my back and this and that and my knees. And I'm like, oh, and she says, okay, stop. And I've been working with her for a couple of years and she said, stop. And I said, okay. She goes, put your tongue on the roof of your mouth. I'm like, okay, like why? And she said, just do it. Oh my God. It was like a whole different body. In the sense that my body responded very differently. My range of motion changed. Everything changed. Why? Because it was braced differently. So my point being is how fucking fascinating is the body, number one. But number two, how one thing, and that is all I'm trying to say here, you guys, is it's just one tiny little adjustment, how it can be so magical for you. For me, I woke up thinking about that. I'm thinking, I'm going to be a fucking rock star with my squats now, just because I put my tongue on the roof of my mouth.
I tell everyone, I feel like a lot of the times when they hire me, they're expecting these monumental life shifts. And like they get that, but the way they get it, like the bridge to that destination is a 2 millimeter shift. So when I tell them to do whatever I get them to do, because it's different for everyone, but when I tell them to do this, sometimes they have a look like, is that it? And I'm like, just watch. Mm-hmm. And then they do it and they're like, why? They're like, not only does the anxiety relieve itself, but they're like, I'm having a hard time getting there. And I'm like, ta-da. Mm-hmm. And very often, I'll say one right now, very often, I just tell them to get more anxious. They're like, on a scale of 0 to 10, they're like, I usually get around an 8 to 9 of anxiety, or let's say a 7 to 8 of anxiety. I say, great. How many times a day? They say, 4 or 5. I'll say, awesome. I want you to get anxious 8 times a day, and I want you to raise it to a level 10, like go way higher with your anxiety. And they notice they just can't do it because they see how they have to create it. And so their brain's like, oh, I don't want to do this. So now they resist the very problem they said they couldn't stop doing. And it's like,
yeah.
And this passion of me explaining these things doesn't come from ego. It comes from, I was so hungry to want to know, like, what are the simple 2 millimeter shifts we could do to change everything?
Yeah.
And when you really learn what they are, you can just change it all that fast. And so I'm passionate about people just understanding there's ways to get through these things, phobias, traumas, anxieties, depression, emotional swings. Like there's ways to get through these things very quickly.
Yeah. Well, it's that whole identity and second gaining too, sometimes, that I don't think people realize that they're doing. And I learned that from Catherine Zinkina. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she calls herself the manifestation babe. And it was so cool and interesting.
Familiar with that name.
Yeah. And it was so cool when I actually learned all that. And then of course in NLP, they talk about that too. But again, it's that one that goes back to a problem showing up and us having this crazy belief, like, well, this is ours forever. So I might as well just, it's like, it's a new arm of mine that I grew and it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
which is mind blowing. So I don't know.
That's where I tell people, like, every emotion we feel, it's got a purpose for a second. Like everything has a positive intention because the nervous system's there to keep us safe. So it's there for a reason. However, it was never no emotion on the planet. It was meant to stay there longer than a couple of minutes. It's literally just trying to give you a message and then just act off of it, right? Like make yourself safe, go closer to the thing. Like it's trying to just give you a message. Yeah. But if we just don't get the fucking message, what often tends to happen is we start meeting our own needs through it.
Yes.
So if I go, oh my God, Kelly, I just had this amazing client breakthrough and I just got $1 million and then all these amazing things, I have a girlfriend car, that does all these cool things. You might be excited for a second, but then you're probably going to eventually, like as most people would, go like, okay, like easy for you. But if I come up to you, I'm like, all the stress in my life, XYZ, this and that. Hey, it's okay. Tell me about it. So I get to, like, my problem allows me to connect with you. I feel significant in my problems. I feel more comfortable that I don't need to face my fears to go out there and try. Like, it's just self-fulfilling. Yeah. And we feel so comfortable there. Like, whenever someone comes to me feeling anxious, depressed, all these things, I tell them, pardon me, I don't usually tell them, but that's not the real problem.
Yeah.
That's a safe problem. That's a safe problem that, strictly speaking, lies within your control. The real problem is the bigger thing that you're afraid to face in your life.
Right. That they feel that they could never be, do, or have.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem. Mm-hmm.
And usually the second you solve that, like, what I call safe problem of just the emotion, they usually are faced with the more quality problem. And when they solve the quality problem, it's going to take them into a whole other stage of life.
Mm-hmm.
So safe problems are anything that lies within your control, such as, an emotion, anxiety, depression, anger, upset, like just emotions, food and other addictions. I'm not saying these things are easy. I'm saying things that are in our actual control. These are things that are in our control, so they're a safe problem because we can get rid of it. We can just decide, even though it's difficult. But quality problems are things that might have big risks, like moving somewhere, getting into a relationship, having a family, ending a relationship, asking for help. Like, they leave us feeling vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so anytime
God forbid we expose ourselves to vulnerability.
God forbid, right? It's like people get just as afraid of being vulnerable as they do to show, like, their genitals for the first time to their spouse. They're like, I hope I'm accepted with this. Right? So it's like, it's terrifying.
I hope I'm accepted with this. That's great. Oh my God. I love that.
So confident and excited when you go to expose yourself. You're like,
yeah.
And you just hope you're going to be okay. And this is how we are with problems. So we're like, how can I be safe? Well, let me develop anxiety. Let me have an anxiety attack or depression let me have some problem that I can hang on to forever.
Yeah.
And it's really just teaching people how to learn to let go of that to face the bigger problem.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And there's something to be said. There's that connection of trauma bonding. Oh, you too, me too. Oh, thank God I'm not alone. Oh, you too. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like people really like live their life. I did like, oh yeah. Oh, you fell off the wagon. Oh, so did I. Okay, let's go get a drink. We'll start over on Monday. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, oh.
And that's exactly what I mean by, I just say it differently, but that's exactly what I mean by our problems tend to meet our needs, right?
Yep.
We meet someone who's also not growing and not doing stuff. We're like, oh, I'm not alone. I feel connected. I still feel like I'm enough. I still feel certain that I'm in, and then just boom. Yeah. So I tell everybody that problems are the biggest addiction we have.
Yeah. Because they're the biggest reliance. Like, people rely on their fucking problems.
And why though? It's because they allow us to stay safe from that deepest fear of not being enough. I don't care what it is. If we're not following through with something, it's just because we don't feel like we were afraid that we're going to fail and not feel like we're enough to be loved.
Yep.
Amen. And so we're like, oh, it's not like I can't get this relationship or business or money or body. It's just I have this depression or this anxiety. It's like, well, change your fucking state and then go do it. It's like, well, no, because now I have this other problem. Like, yeah, do you see the pattern here?
Yeah. No. Yeah. This layer, let's get rid of it. Now there's that. It's almost like peeling back objections when you.
It's like a sales call. Yeah.
Yeah.
That objection. Yeah. It's crazy. But, I think we've all, for the most part, been conditioned growing up to believe that these emotions and things are different than what they are.
Yeah.
My teacher, obviously I said, is Tony and Chloe, Tony Robbins, Chloe Madonis, but Chloe is somebody who pioneered the field of strategic family therapy. And she was getting people from like insane hospitals or whatever you want to call it, like those clinical
insane asylum kind of things, for lack of better words.
Those real ill hospitals where they quote unquote tried to make people better. And when they couldn't, she would get the call from the hospital and she would solve it within a few sessions. Mm-hmm. But it's because she really believed in this whole approach of like, there's always a way to get through to someone, and it can happen in a moment, because every single thing we do, whether we are splitting personalities or we just fucking can't go up and ask the pretty guy out or the pretty girl out, doesn't matter what the problem seems to be, there's a positive intention behind it.
Yeah.
So if you can find that and resolve it, the problem will go away. This woman has helped people who are suicidal, who've had seizures, pardon my abruptness, but everything from incest, rape, abuse, like the really extreme things in the world. And she's just like knocking it out of the park. And so it's like, if that's possible for human beings to get through quicker, what have we been taught for the last 100 years? Like, we're being taught that these are mental illnesses and getting diagnoses like they're who we are, but they're not. They're a response that was helping us to adapt to a certain painful situation. That is it.
Yep. I love that. The response. And that's so true. So you had talked about, first of all, I love how you said decide, because that is such a huge, huge, huge thing. It's just making the decision. And then when you make the decision, you just align everything in that direction,
Yeah.
you know,
decide and resolve.
Yeah. So you had talked about that you had sucked at relationships. So I would love for you to expand on that.
Yeah. So, when I was growing up, this is the only part that, like I said a minute ago, when I said I asked like about the parents first, a quick context. I craved my mom's love, and I remember growing up, what I felt like I had to be for her to get her love was to be very pleasing, to be very gentle, to be very nice. Those are kind of the key words. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to later elementary school, when you start like getting into boys and girls, and then fast forward after that into high school, when you're really starting to develop your first relationships. I was such a pleaser. Like, I did not want to upset anyone, and I did not understand the whole masculine and feminine dynamic. It took me until 18, 19 to figure this out because of Tony and Chloe and all these people. So I was pleasing everybody. So what I couldn't fucking figure out for the life of me, I'm like, why is it that all of the women, girls in high school, why are all the girls flocking to me, but no one wants to date me? And if they do, they leave after a couple of weeks and they want to stay friends, literally. And I'm like, this is driving me insane. And people, like men or women, might be listening to this thinking I have an ego. No, this is not an egotistical thing. This sucked thing. So I was like, why is it that they're drawn to me, but they don't want to be with me? And I began to realize there is this difference between masculine and feminine energy in what we're attracted to. So because I was so pleasing and so kind, they felt safe in that I wouldn't be some kind of threat to them, but they didn't feel safe enough that I would take care of them, so to speak, or bring out more of a masculine, dark, assertive side around them. And so I just had to figure out, like, why is this not working? And then I didn't realize also that the way we just communicate is so radically different. Like, men are just like this. Women are like, this. So I didn't realize that. And so I had to learn that whole learning curve. And I think one of the reasons why most people have unsatisfactory relationships, to put it nicely, is because we don't understand there's a difference between masculine and feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so very true. And it's like you said, you had to learn, right? But you still want to be authentic and true to yourself. And I think that that's where a lot of us tend to lean into not being ourselves and being the people pleaser. And we say yes when we really mean no. And then we develop coping mechanisms around that. I mean, it's just, it's all so intertwined. But you had mentioned about your mom and the emotions and things like that. So it made me think of Dr. Gabor Mate. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Oh, Tyler.
Sounds familiar, actually, but I'm not sure.
Since you are very much into that family unit and the whole connection with that, you need to look up Dr. Gabor. So he actually has this this new book. I think he's got like 5 different books or something, but he's so fascinating. But his latest book is called The Myth of Normal. And he talks so much about like the emotions. And one thing that I just really stuck with me was I listened to a 2-hour, and I'll send you the link, but I listened to a 2-hour podcast that he did with Joe Rogan. And one of my mentors sent it to me, and I was just like blown away because, sometimes we have these tendencies, which I didn't realize that my excessive working, even though it is a passion and I love it and doesn't feel like work, was definitely a coping mechanism that I had created from my people pleasing, being raised in an alcoholic home, trying to not set off the landmines, so you just keep yourself busy and you stay out of the way, So Dr. Gabor talks about, and I'm probably not exact on this, but he talks about how in his mind and perception that when his mother had given him, I think it was to an aunt or something, because this was around the time of, like the whole Hitler thing.
Mm-hmm.
And his perception was, I'm being abandoned and I'm unloved, when it was really, I'm trying to protect you and keep you alive. But his brain's perception was something completely different. So then he developed this whole life of, I'm not worthy, I'm not this, I'm not that. So then what does he become? A lot of the addictive behaviors, which I was like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. Okay, sex, shopping, alcohol, food, like da, 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 da. And then you also lean into things like, I'm a high achiever. So if I have this credential and that credential and this and this and this, and I'm getting validation from all of these outsiders in my world, that makes me feel important and loved and seen and all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh my God. So I'm sure all of this stuff is very familiar to you, but just sharing this, because when I heard his interpretation of things, I was just like, holy shit. Like, wow, this is so relevant and so real. And because this has a lot to do with what you do, I think that you would really, really find him fascinating.
Oh, definitely. I think, like you said, how he created a meaning that was inaccurate in the very beginning. And I talk a lot about this to people, whereas the meaning we give to an event, like nothing means anything until we give it a meaning.
Yeah.
Like nothing means anything until it's all up for interpretation. The second we give it a meaning, we're going to notice all of our feelings and behaviors come from that. And then years later, we end up being a workaholic and we're like, it's my passion. It's like, yeah, but there's other reasons you're doing it. It's not just that, right? So, but something fascinating you also mentioned there, I will look up that name when we're done here. Something else that you mentioned there that triggered this thought in me is, I find that a lot of people go to a professional and their problem never gets solved. And one thing I have realized about that is the way we approach solving a problem will be determined by how we're defining the fucking problem.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I decide Kelly yells at me right now, and I decide that means she fucking hates me. In reality, why she yelled at me was just, or the meaning was she yelled at me. But if what she really meant by that was just she was passionate, and I came off as that yelling at me, I'm going to feel, maybe say I go to insecurity and find a way to cope with that, when in reality, that meaning was so inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that somebody would define my problem of now trying to cope with it through some other way, right? Kelly yells at me is my interpretation, so I cope with it by getting anxious. And now they say, oh, you have an anxiety disorder. With that definition, they're never going to fucking get to the real problem. Oh, the problem was that you were yelled at before, so you developed a belief that says anxiety protects me. How about we just get rid of the belief? Mm-hmm. If you say you have an anxiety disorder or chemical imbalance, you're fucked.
Yep.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do with that? Like, there's no approach you can take now, but there was if you just realized that was just a decision you made about something that was not accurate.
Yes. Yes. There was an image I came across before, and it was so well said. And it said, we humans are meaning-making machines.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so true.
I love that you said, I don't want to do too much of the talking, but you got me excited there. There's 3 questions that I tell people, or questions. There's 2 ways to say this. There's 3 decisions we're always making. First one is, what are we going to focus on? If we don't have something we're going to focus on, we can't do anything else. So what am I going to focus on is our first decision we made. What does this mean is the second question. And what are we going to do is the third. So like right now, everyone listening to this is making these 3 decisions, just like you and I. So what are we going to focus on? Well, you and I are focusing on the conversation, and they're listening or watching, right? Mm-hmm. The second decision they're going to make is this relevant to me? Is this useful? Is this something worth listening to? If yes, the third decision that they're going to make is, I'm going to continue listening. Mm-hmm. The third decision we're going to make is we're going to continue talking and having the conversation. So the meaning you create out of any situation is going to determine everything. Yeah. I've told people, if you can just notice that one pattern of what you're focused on throughout the week or throughout the day, what are you focused on throughout the day? What's in your control or out of your control? What's the meaning you tend to give it? Oh, people hate me. Woe is me. I can't do this. No one likes me. I'll never amount to. If that's the meaning, you're always going to do things that are self-fulfilling or not self-fulfilling. Like, self-fulfilling. You're going to get that. Yeah. It's going to reinforce your beliefs. But if you just change one of those 3 decisions, what you're either focusing on, what it means, or what you're going to do, your whole life changes that fast. Literally. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is super fascinating. It's just a decision.
Yeah. The brain is just incredible to me. And the other thing about the brain that people are always mind blown is that it's always just looking to conserve energy because we're designed to survive. So the brain just wants to do what it's familiar with. It wants to lean into that warm, cozy, fuzzy blanket. And it's always going to want to lean into, oh, yeah, I remember that. Let's go do that. Let's do that instead. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so when I bring that to people's attention, it's like, okay, so when you hear that dumb shit thought that you don't want to do just because you hear it doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just the brain saying, I'm kind of being lazy over here. I don't want to do that new thing because it's going to take more time, energy, focus. It's draining me and I'm over here trying to survive. Like that's how I put it. Do you explain it in a different way or do you kind of?
I would different words, but exact same process. Like I tell people the brain's number one job is just to keep you safe. It's to keep you alive. It's not meant to make you happy. And so anything that goes outside of what you're familiar with is going to just scare the fucking shit out of you. And you're going to want to take the easy route, not because you're a lazy piece of shit. No one is. It's just because it's uncertain. It's unfamiliar. And like you said about the whole safety thing, and you also said conserve energy. I think that's another way to describe this is because it would take more energy to do the unknown. Is the brain is always going to try to opt for the easier route. Mm-hmm. And so this is what I was talking about when you messaged me earlier saying how I wrote that post on Facebook about, what did I say? Oh, the electric fence metaphor.
Yeah.
So many of us put this electric fence up and it's far below what our actual potential is. But the second we come anywhere close to that electric fence, we get a shock of anxiety. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Well, no, you can, but you just want to stay safe inside the little circle you've created for yourself. All you got to do is break the belief and just keep going. Yeah. And I tell people make it complicated to break beliefs. I just say, just question it.
Oh boy, do they ever make it complicated, right?
Oh my God. We love to complicate things just to be like, oh, there's no way to do it. I'm going to stay safe. Like everything in the world's just.
Yeah. And because people think not to interrupt you, but I just like, oh my God. Because people think if it's easy, that it's not right. Like, oh, if this isn't hard. If this isn't hard, then that can't be the right way. There's just no way.
I want to piggyback on that to do with the financial thing. Are you familiar with Alex Hormozi?
Yeah, the beard guy, mustache, gym guy. Yes.
This guy makes thinking about money. I've never heard of someone talk about money in such a way where it simplifies everything. He had this podcast I was listening to, and this is a metaphor for life, by the way. In terms of difficulty and hard, like making things harder. That's why I thought of this. He's like, if you are asking, how can I make $100,000 this year? Which to most people is like, wow, that'd be an amazing question to ask. He's like, and I'm not making fun. I'm literally paraphrasing him. He's like, this is one of the dumbest questions you can ask yourself because someone who's making a fuckload of money is not asking that. What they're asking, because they think that's a waste of time, they're asking, how can I sell something that is just way more valuable? Mm-hmm. How can I sell something that's just worth more? So they don't think in terms of how can I make a certain amount in XYZ time. They're just like, how can I just sell something or be more valuable that makes more money quicker? So he said, for example, if you ask yourself the question, how can I make $100,000 this year? Maybe that's more than you've ever made. Awesome. So if you ask yourself that question, you're going to come up with, oh, go to school to be an engineer, go to school for this, learn how to do this, learn how to do this. Go get a job that pays this. Go get a job that pays that. Those are the answers you're going to come up with. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, how can I find a way to make $1 million this month? Now, most people are listening to me and they're shutting off. They're like, fuck you right now. No, listen. If you sincerely, with real authenticity and determination, ask yourself, how can I do that this month? Let's just play around with this. Your brain is going to come up with different answers, such as, well, I could sell one thing that's worth $1 million. And let's just stop there for a second. Let's not make it conceptual. It's like you could say, okay, if I find a way to add $5 million worth of revenue to a company's business, they'll be more than willing to pay me. I guess that'd be 20%, right? $1 million. Of course they would. Why would they not? You just make them 5. And you just, one idea could do that. Now, by the way, I'm not saying I've done that. I do think like that. Coaching is my passion, so I'm not going to leave that.
Yeah.
But it's like, we love to stay in this comfortable way of thinking, but we're asking ourselves the wrong questions just to stay in our own little survival. Just ask a better question and you will break those beliefs so easily.
I love that, because it's so interesting that you bring this up, because that is something that I recognized about myself recently, is that I realized why does my brain stop here when I know that it has the capacity to be here, like huge? And why is it that I'm always like, it's almost like it's at the set point of just enough, the just enough set point, or it's fine, like the line of fine, you know what I'm saying? And so I hired a coach specifically to help me with expanding that so that I could have I called it, like, it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's like more of the fairy tale thinking, that it is so big that it almost seems like I can't even comprehend it. But I recognize that my brain, because the way I don't know, maybe you can help articulate what I'm trying to say. I
will. I got you.
Yeah, but no, go ahead. Please take it from here, darling.
I was going to say, I know where you're going with this conceptually. So I have found that, bar none, across the board, the only thing that stops us, whether it's you or me, not just the audience, both of us too, where we're finding those limits, like where our brain won't think past a certain spot, it's because we weren't rewarded for that from the people who we crave love from most growing up. So anything past that limit of thinking equals like death to us. It equals, I was not rewarded for this. I was not given love for thinking this way. Don't fucking go there. And so it shuts it off. So anytime anybody, like I've coached 2 people who are millionaires now, and I don't say it to brag. I say it's because this is a universal problem. Yeah. I mean, not you, the audience, right?
Yeah.
I make way less than millions, but they came to me because they're like, hey, you seem to just get people through their mindset shit very quickly. Help me out with this. They had the same problem. I just said, okay. So they're like, I want this. This seems to be in the way. This is where I am right now. I'm like, okay, great. Whose love did you crave? Example. One was like my dad. Who did you have to be for my dad? Or who did you have to be for your dad? They said, well, I had to be this, that, and the other thing. I said, okay. And who could you never be? Like, what got you disciplined? What got you ignored? What got you punished? And they said this, that, and the other thing. I was like, so exactly what you got punished for is what you need to do in order to get to this next mark in your life. So I said to you, doing this thing in your nervous system equals I will not be loved, therefore I will not survive, therefore I can't seem to do it. No, you can. But we just have to like learn how to regulate ourselves to the point where it's like, okay, I realize I'm not going to die. Shut off that, as I called it today, that electric fence. Turn it off. Realize nothing's going to happen. Take a deep breath and do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to think differently, but it's hard to do that when it was not rewarded as a child.
Thank you for sharing that, because I literally was like thinking, it's almost like you said, it is literally shut off, Tyler. It has literally been shut off. Yeah. So now that I realize, and the way that you explained it, it makes so much sense, because I'm over here sitting here thinking, I can't get beyond here, you know, that, and now I get what you're saying. It's that it was shut off for a legitimate reason about survival, right? Totally. And that's really what it comes down to. Ooh, we need to talk more about that. So you said something that I loved, and this is great, that the brain is not meant to make you happy. It is not meant to make you happy. That the brain is just our survival mechanism and it keeps us alive, but it's not meant to make us happy. And that is just, that is so well said. Somebody might hear that and say, oh my God, that's all I needed to hear. Really? You know, and it, again, kind of goes back to that one thing, just like my coach telling me to put my fucking tongue on the roof of my mouth.
It's true. Like, if the brain was designed to make us happy, we'd all be fucking happy.
Yeah.
There would be legitimately zero problems in the entire world, because even if there was something we didn't like, the brain would find a way to make ourselves happy, and then the problem would not exist because we'd be fine with it there.
Yep.
And by the way, I've never even explained it that way. That was kind of a cool way of articulating it, but it's true. The only reasons we ever have problems is because we're perceiving it in a way that makes it a problem. If we didn't judge the fact that the thing was the way it was, there would be no problem.
Yeah.
But it's the brain's job to find problems, because if there's no problems, your brain goes, well, what am I going to survive from? So it's never going to stop. We just have to no, that's not true. Keep moving. It's so much more simple. But what I've learned is that people have what I call a blueprint, or what most people will probably call a mindset of what needs to happen in order for you to feel happy. Mm-hmm. Most people have this shit so conflicting. It's like, well, I need to do this thing, but if I do this thing, I'm a failure. It's like, well, then you're never going to, you're conflicted. Or I need to do this thing that is super unrealistic in the timeline that I'm giving myself to accomplish it. And if I don't do that, I'm not enough. But if I do it, it's impossible. So, we've just wired ourselves in a way that we're never going to make ourselves happy. And so I've asked people before, I'm like, what if your belief was, I need to wake up and appreciate the fact that my loved ones are okay and my feet are on the floor. They're like, and I just see their face. They're just stunned. They're like, and I'm like, would you be happier? They're like, well, yeah, I guess I would be. I'm like, so, okay, let's just say what would have to happen? And they tell me all these things. And so I'll ask them, what is the chances that you're consistently going to make 10K a month, be 15% body fat, you never yell at your children, you find the perfect love of your life who never makes you feel insignificant ever, people love you, people give you 1 million hugs a day, and they're like, oh, I guess not really that realistic. And it's just breaking down people's expectations, because we like I said, we just have this blueprint of what needs to happen to be happy, and it's not realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. It is it's just so unrealistic in a lot of things.
Yeah, we have to
realize it. They don't realize it until you kind of pull it out. Till you take it from the subconscious to the conscious, and they're like, that was kind of silly for me to think that.
And that's essentially what my coaching is in essence is. So I call it a blueprint, which is just a set of beliefs, values, and rules that control all of the way we think and feel. And so basically that's what I do. Our survival software was born or created such a long time ago, we don't need to remember. We didn't do it consciously. I help them make themselves consciously aware of it, redesign it in a way, play around with it until it's like, okay, that would work to make me happy. And then install it in their body so it's actually how they respond to life. And suddenly they're happy, like they're doing great. And this could sound weird to people listening, but if we think about it, your beliefs control what you feel. So if you notice the crazy beliefs, you change it to something better and you install it into yourself, like you condition yourself until you believe that those are really true, you will feel better automatically.
Yeah.
It is never the outside world that makes you unhappy. It is always ourselves. Man's Search for Meaning. He explains this very well. Your fucking concentration camp, and he's one of the happiest dudes.
Who was that? What was his name?
Viktor Frankl.
Oh, okay.
So basically, a psychiatrist of Jewish heritage basically talking about how he was in the concentration camps and he's happy as hell. Most people, if they get the wrong sauce on their sandwich in a drive-thru, they're fucking angry.
Yeah.
And he went through probably anyone's real definition of hell. So it's like, it is ourselves keeping ourselves from being happy.
Yeah. Well, as you know, what is that one book, which I haven't read yet, but it's the title that says, You Are the Mountain.
Never heard of that one either.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, God, I had a client that shared that with me, but this was a lovely conversation. I thought I had one more note that I wanted to ask you about, but I think we got everything that I wanted to ask you, but this was great. This was really fun. I knew it would be. I love how we were able to share our our similar viewpoints and how we articulate it and how we verbally process it. And, we're able to kind of chunk it down, for people to understand. But I do really feel like this conversation is going to change somebody's life. I really do. Because
all we need is one.
Telling you, there's a lot of golden nuggets in this conversation. I know you agree.
Yeah, definitely.
I know what I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about the girl with the balloon.
Oh, well, what do you want to know?
So she was afraid of the balloons. It started as being a child or something. And it kept her from what? Like the painful part of it was that she wasn't able to be around balloons. Don't know the whole story. And then the outcome. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know the specific traumatic event, only because I never ask my clients to go there, only because I personally don't find it useful. But
yeah,
I don't know the specific thing, but she told me she was like 4, 5, 6 years old when something really traumatic happened with a balloon, scared the holy shit fuck out of her. And since then, like I said earlier in this podcast, it was like that bicep that flexed.
Yeah.
And then she just was never able to find a way to unflex it, right? To relax that, which was the anxiety. It was that phobia. So since around that age, anytime she's near a balloon, anytime she thought of a balloon, and anytime she'd even seen rubber, because that's what balloons are made of, like that latex rubber. Anytime, so her brain had generalized, this trauma of the balloon, and it didn't just say, oh, balloons are scary. It went, anything that remotely reminds me of balloons at all. So the shape of it, the actual balloon itself, what it's made of, the context in which, like the situation,
the feel of it, the fact that it floats in the air, like everything around
everything. So something that floats, something that's full of air, like all of the things about a balloon you could possibly think of. Mm-hmm. Her brain went, be fucking terrified of it. So she's living her life. I think she was 26 or 7 or 28 when I did this like phobia cure on her. And anytime she was in a situation where, again, any of those things, right? Something that's floaty, something that's rubber, a balloon itself, birthday parties, because that was a generalization. Any of these things, she would break out into full tears, breakdown. And it was starting to ruin her life because she was saying this was happening everywhere. She was being triggered everywhere. And her and her fiance wanted to eventually have kids, but they thought she's never going to be able to go to this kid's birthday parties or to bring their kid to their friend's birthday party. We know how common that is with little kids, right? They have a million friends and there's always these things. So she said, Tyler, I've been to 3 therapists. I've been to several psychologists, and they've done different little things, and nothing's actually helped. Nothing's even calmed me down a little bit. So I told her, I said, okay, what have they brought you through? And she said they'd done things like having her cut up balloons in her hand, having her feel it. And I understood the intention of these therapists. The intention was, if I can get her to feel it and sense it in different ways, maybe her brain will calm down and not be turn off that electric fence, so to speak.
Okay.
And I knew that wouldn't work, though I understood the intention, because in order for a phobia or a trauma or anxiety of any sort to go down, like to be fully relieved, not cope, gone, we have to change the way our brain, our unconscious mind, is processing it. So just kind of feeling it differently is not going to be quite enough. We have to change it at the unconscious side. So to not be too scientific now, what I did was I literally showed her how to disassociate from that traumatic experience in her mind, break the pattern of how she was seeing it. I'll give you a very quick example. It's like if you watched a movie and it's a horror movie. What do we all say when that fucking person is walking down that like dark hallway and it's like screeching sounds? We're like, don't fucking go down. We all get scared as the audience, because seeing it like that with those colors and those sounds will scare you. That's basically what she was doing with balloons in her head. So I had to get her to disassociate from it, see the actual imagery differently, and do that all while being in a confident state. So her nervous system made a new connection. And so after that, I had her popping balloons. Her dog was popping balloons. We were having a great time. It took us 20 minutes. She never thought she'd be able to do that, but all she had to do was process the trauma differently, process that event. That's it. since then, I guess it's been, I don't know what the month is, 10 months, 8 months, something like that. Whatever last May was now, and now we're in January. She's only been getting more confident in the exact same areas that she felt any anxiety at all. So this transformed her life in 20 minutes.
Oh, massively. Massive. Right? Massive. Like you should be like, the maid of honor in her wedding. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously.
No kidding.
I mean, that is like massively, or she should name her first child after you. You know what I mean? Like,
that'd be cute.
Because it is such a huge thing, because she's able to live a life that she never ever thought that she ever could. So that's beautiful. And I love that. It's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. And that's,
of course,
that is just how powerful the mind is and how simple it can be. How simple.
I think if people were to understand that, if you feel a certain way about a situation, you learn to feel that way. So the very basics is this. If when you think about something right now, you get anxious immediately, all you have to do, the essence of it, all you have to do is get yourself feeling really confident, like really pumped up, like really just strong. And in that state, think of the thing that makes you feel anxious while you're in a very confident state, or very confident, strong, just a very strong state of some kind.
Yeah.
Think of that thing that would usually make you feel anxious, and just you do that with enough repetition, and it will link new emotions to it. So very, 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 very simple. But I don't sit here and say that this won't be hard for people, because to hear it for the first time is a little like awkward and they don't understand it. But yeah, it definitely, this kind of thing changes lives for sure.
Yeah, people don't get it. They don't realize that change is state of mind dependent.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, lovely, wonderful, cool. We'll make sure that your contact information or whatever it is that you would like to share will be in the show notes, like maybe your email or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. And we'll, make sure that all of that is in there. So thank you so much for joining me. This was a really fun, cool recording. I think that it was probably one of my favorites, just because I love this topic. I love the mind so much. So thank you so much, Tyler.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you love what you heard, please be sure to share it with me by leaving a review. If you aren't already following me on social media, come find me on Facebook by searching Kelly Dunlap, or come join me in my Master Your Mindset and Metabolism Facebook group by going to kellydunlap.com/group. I cannot wait to connect with you on the next episode.